What happens when a pastor who is trying to fight feminism gives perfectly sound advice, but forgets that culture is shaping the way people perceive things? Picture this. A couple comes into the office of the pastor and they're having marital issues. They aren't getting along. She is constantly nagging at him, whatever it might be. The pastor opens up his Bible, he evaluates and says, I've got some biblical knowledge for this. Let's open up the Bible here. Wives, submit to your husband is the advice he gives. It's perfectly sound biblical knowledge, but what he is forgetting is that these are people coming from culture. You can't assume that people are coming to you with a hope and a desire to follow sound biblical doctrine, and you can't assume that the way they perceive the biblical doctrine is traditionally the way that it has been viewed for thousands of years. What ends up happening is he gives the advice, and rather than producing a woman who looks at submission as a way of strength, a way of helping and to providing for a joint outcome, what maybe ends up happening is what we've seen is the princess treatment, where she views this as, well, if he's going to lead, then I'm going to dead weight.
If you're at a restaurant and how you interact with the waitstaff and the hostess. If I am at a restaurant with my husband, I do not talk to the hostess, I do not open any doors, and I do not order my own food.
I'm not doing that. I mean, I'm great with chivalry. I'm great with things of that nature to a certain extent, but the entitlement and the attitude about it, that this is the way to do life, and that this is the way that a man should treat a woman. And if you're not doing this, then in some way you're doing it wrong. In some way, a woman is not at the maximum of submission. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this doesn't look like submission to me. It looks like entitlement. Let's be clear, submission is biblical, but the question is, in what culture are we talking about submission? In a culture of self-sacrifice where being the helpmate and providing a joint effort in the household, submission looks very biblical. It looks exactly how it should. But when you're raised in a culture of comfort, of believing that you are entitled to something, a culture that believes that you should be getting your life's goals met, your life's desires, submission looks like relief. It looks like a way to get what you want without working for it. So when the pastor says to submit, sounds great, it looks good. On the other side of submission, we can't assume that we're always dealing with a good man. There is abuse out there, although it's far more rare than good men are, it still exists. And so you can't take that for granted. Now, men do also get physically abused. A lot of times they're not going to fight back. They know that they're stronger and they married crazy or they're dating crazy, right? So I don't want to leave that off the table. But then there's also little boys that say, I need dinner on the table at 5 o'clock sharp, or I need dinner on the table at 6 o'clock sharp. It's 6:05. Dinner's not at the table. They throw a baby fit, right? I need the house to be perfectly cleaned when I come home. If it's not, I'm going to throw a fit. Your job is to upkeep the house. If you're not doing your job, I'm going to act like a big-time baby. So who is the head of the household? That is another thing a pastor would like to establish when counseling married couples. And the answer is obviously the man in Scripture is the head of the household. But if he's constantly reiterating that he's the head of the household, he's constantly telling his wife to submit, which it never says that it is his job to tell his wife to submit, who really is in charge? What needs to be remembered is that leadership, when it comes to our Christian lives, Christ bled for his bride. That leadership is a burden before it is a privilege. The sacrifice and the burden of being in that spot needs to be remembered. If a man invokes authority more than he invokes sacrifice, he's not imaging Christ, he's protecting his ego. So when pastors fail to bring forth the full counsel of God, they don't remember modern culture and factor in immaturity, what ends up happening is one side dominates and the other side disengages. So let's talk plainly. The princess treatment is not proper submission. It is quiet entitlement, where she can feel safe and secure and she can be babied and pampered, where the man is holding the responsibility and the emotional weight and the stress. This isn't what proper submission looks like. It's quiet rebellion. This allows her to critique from the passenger seat and brings an imbalance to their marriage that breeds resentment in him and eventually breeds resentment on both sides. Here's the core problem. Pastoral advice that ignores how culture has formed people's ideas will misapply the solutions. In a feminist culture, you must guard against appeasement. On the other side, you don't want to lean too far into the conservative advice that leads to control and also passivity. Both are distortions of the full counsel of God. In the last video, we exposed the errors in happy wife, happy life. In this video, we expose the errors in the polar opposite way, just submit. The crazy thing is both of them lead to the same place. They are distortions when culture is not accounted for, when we don't bring the awareness to the fact that feminism has seeped into the church. Biblical marriage requires strong men willing to sacrifice. It requires women that view submission as not an obligation, but a privilege. It requires not domination or control, but it requires two people not submitting to each other for the purpose of just submission, but submitting to Christ and therefore fulfilling their roles the way they were meant, the way they were created for, and the way that they were designed. If you watched all the way to the end and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like it. I appreciate all of the comments I got in the last video, and I hope to see you in the comment section here as well.